Hello everyone, Mark Merrill with FARM, Fairness in Reporting Media, the Fact Files. This time, folks, we're going into the judicial branch of the government, but with a very trusted and experienced gentleman who runs an organization called Judicial Watch. Perhaps you've heard of him, Tom Fitton. Today it's about Judicial Watch's removal Judicial Watch's removal, we'll say, of activist judges at all levels. This has been a long time coming, don't you think, folks? How many people out there have been affected by the corrupt courts? Janet Mills, our governor here in the great state of Maine, has not made the state great anymore. It's made it corrupt. No thanks to the judges that she's appointed over the past almost 8 years she's been in office. 8 years too long, as far as we're concerned, here at FARM. So to all of you law-abiding Americans, in this special edition, we hear from Judicial Watch President and founder Tom Fitton in a recent interview on C-SPAN, speaking about dealing with removing corrupt activist, leftist judges at all levels of U.S. Congress, but also, folks, at all levels of local, state, and federal positions. Well, here's what Mr. Fitton had to say as he was explaining to the C-SPAN host what has to be done to uphold our Constitution, rights, and freedoms.
How are you funded?
We're a nonprofit educational foundation funded by the public, no USAID funding, and we sue the government for documents. We sue the government when they engage in wrongdoing. For instance, we've been doing work on election integrity, cleaning up voter rolls. We've been challenging reparations programs and woke racism, as I call it. So we're kind of a conservative version of the ACLU, and we are, when it comes at least to open records laws, the number one litigator in the country in terms of government transparency.
The conservative version of the ACLU, does your mission or your tactics change when there's a Republican in the White House versus a Democrat in the White House?
You know, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, I probably would say, oh yeah, things change, but things don't change that much. We have to sue the government to get access to information, no matter who's in office. You may have support from the president individually on transparency issues, but the agencies are really slow to follow any direction in that regard. I joke the resting state of the deep state is secrecy, and all things being equal, they're not going to give you the material.
How do you get the material? You say you sue the government. Where do you go to sue the government?
Well, there's a Federal Freedom of Information Act, and what happens is you ask for the records, and more or less you give them some time to respond or not respond, and depending on the nature of the response, you can actually go into federal court, and then the agency has to come in and defend its withholdings or explain to the court why it is they need more time to respond. And so you've got the federal version of that. Also, you have the state version of those laws. And sometimes the state laws are better than the federal law in terms of ensuring transparency and ensuring a quick government reaction. So we sue at the federal level, obviously, mostly, but we have several FOIA or open records lawsuits at the state level as well on election integrity and other issues of public interest.
What's your opinion of federal judges?
My opinion of federal judges, the judiciary is a branch of the federal government established by our Constitution. It's a separate but equal branch, and it's incumbent, in my view, kind of to get to the point, I think, of the topic here today, potentially, for judges to apply the law fairly and neutrally without letting their political animus get in the way of it.
What is judicial activism?
Judicial activism is substituting your own personal views for the fair and neutral application of the law. And it's a temptation for judges of both the left and the right. It's like, oh, well, I know what the outcome of this particular case should be, and I'm going to figure out a way how to get there, using the judicial process. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. You can have a philosophy as you approach issues, but you're really supposed to fairly apply the law without regard to party or partisanship.
The Washington Post has a story about cases pending in federal courts having to do with Trump executive orders. This is the lead graph. Unions, civil rights groups, and others are squaring off in court with the Trump administration, filing roughly 140 lawsuits over the dismantling of cuts in agencies by DOJ, firings of federal employees, immigration restrictions. The challenges have blocked many of President Trump's initiatives for now, while the administration has won a few significant early victories. Does that concern you, the number of lawsuits and the number of executive actions that have been blocked via federal courts?
The number of lawsuits doesn't concern me because I recognize President Trump has engaged in an unprecedented strategy of reform that's really broad and hard to keep up with. So it's no surprise that his political opponents or people who think they're being harmed are suing. What's concerning is how many judges are kind of I'm not a lawyer, but I've enough unfortunate experience in litigation with the government, is how quickly these courts are interfering with the presidential powers, duties, and responsibilities and granting emergency relief to these individuals in ways I don't think the law allows for. So there's this almost panicked judicial decision-making that's more political than constitutional in my view, and that's what's concerning. It's everyone has a right to sue, within the law, but courts are supposed to police requests for relief that aren't really appropriate under the law. I want to sue on all sorts of things, and the lawyers will say, Tom, well, you can sue, but the question is whether you'll be successful. And the problem is, the perception is that if you're a conservative pursuing this type of claim against a Democrat administration, who would not get this reaction from the judiciary that is so helpful to the left. Now, in the end, Trump may win more than he loses, but the process is the punishment, and in my view, you have judges usurping the executive and legislative powers and pausing self-government for months based on a legal pretext to cover a political animus.
When should a federal judge be impeached and removed?
When? Well, the Constitutional envisions, obviously, impeachment for the traditional corruption, bribery crimes. Either, ethics crimes, kind of obvious ethics crimes, someone taking money for a judicial decision, or obstructing justice, the way some judges actually were accused of doing and impeached for, and removed. And the interesting thing about the impeachment power is that the founders were concerned, not the founders, but Americans were concerned about the Constitution and whether it gave the judiciary too much power. And in the Federalist Papers, they said, don't worry. If you have a judicial usurpation of the powers of the other departments or the other branches of government, the legislative or the executive, they said there are a few things. They said the judiciary is weak, really can't enforce its powers without the support of the other branches. And also you have this complete security of impeachment. So impeachment was put in there not just to check corrupt judges in the criminal sense of the word, but judges who act outside their power. And there's been really no impeachment of that nature, kind of impeachment of activist judges, as I would call it, since 1804. And there was one justice who was impeached. He wasn't removed. But there's only been impeachments for corruption since then, not on activist judges. And I think it should be discussed. If I were Jim Jordan or the House leadership, I'd be holding hearings on the impeachment power. Is it likely to result in anyone being removed? No. Even impeached? Maybe not. But I think some of the judges who have been involved here, I think you'll find, if they wanted to do a serious impeachment inquiry, a series of rulings, not just one ruling, showing that the judge is activist and doesn't respect his oath to stay within his lane, which is to make judgments based on a neutral application of the law, as opposed to, basically being a politician in robes.
So that is it, folks, right there with Tom Fitton, president and founder of Judicial Watch. A few more things we want to bring to your attention, ladies and gentlemen, while we have this opportunity to do that, so we will do that in just a moment here. We have a few more excerpts from a magazine, AMAC. I don't know if you're familiar with AMAC or not, but we will get that to you in just a second here. This one is called The American. Just a second here while we look that up here for you. Apologize for that not being available. The association, rather, AMAC is the Association of Mature American Citizens, coming out with their June edition, June of 2025. But like all politicians, and there are, in all branches of our government nowadays, folks, as compared to the way it was 35, 45, 50 years ago, every branch of the government, the judiciary power includes some limitations, but federal courts should have a focused, limited jurisdiction and to support and defend the legitimate exercise of executive or legislative powers, but blurring the lines between the three branches by allowing the judiciary to pilfer executive and legislative power, as several judges have done with their far-reaching decisions impacting our national security, it disrupts the operation of our constitutional republic and undermines the will of the people. Surprise. Innocent people go to jail. Not January 6th Committee, 2021. Finally dissolved by Donald Trump. We're going to be prosecuting some of those members of that kangaroo, ridiculous, unconstitutional slam against political opponents, formed originally by Nancy Pelosi. The obstruction of self-government must be prevented, says Mr. Fitton, especially when done in Lady Justice's name and in her courtrooms. No one is above the law. Where's that written? In the Constitution, especially not those who interpret it. So that's a big takeaway on that one, folks, and we certainly appreciate you joining us today on Firm for our Fact Files version of Judicial Watch, removing activist judges at all levels and how to go about it. For more information on Judicial Watch and Tom Fitton, plus his staff of trial attorneys and cases that are on their schedule, plus how to subscribe to their newsletters and updates, folks, you can go to judicialwatch.org. We'll post that at the end of our program today as well. And let us never forget, ladies and gentlemen, this little pamphlet you should certainly consider getting for yourself and your family. For a small fee, or possibly even free for a bundle of them, you can go to Hillsdale College, as you can see here at the bottom of the pamphlet. Go online to Hillsdale College. hillsdalecollege.edu, by the way, for a copy of the combined Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. As always, folks, we want to make sure that you understand that we are Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media, looking out for your rights and freedoms. But you can look up our podcasts anytime as well, right there on rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. We're also on Twitter or X, YouTube, and also we appreciate your input right there at the bottom. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us. Stay safe. Pray for our country, our well-being, and yours, folks. Peace to all.